Descript is an all-in-one audio and video editing software, and it's been incredibly powerful for me in allowing me to edit video and audio podcasts. So when I first started using it, I was a little overwhelmed with learning the interface, but they do have a great help and support page that I really dug into. So after going through a few of their walkthroughs and tutorials, I was fairly confident in my abilities within a few days. The real-time waveform editing makes cutting, splicing, and rearranging content easy.
This is Recorded Content, a podcast for small, scrappy B2B marketing teams who want to get the most out of podcasting. In each episode, we'll explore how podcasting can drive your company's content strategy, build brand awareness, and help you connect with your ideal customers. Let's get to it.
Hey, this is Ben. I'm the Managing Director of Podcasting at Motion and your host for this episode of Recorded Content. Recorded Content is brought to you by Motion, a done-for-you podcast agency for small, scrappy B2B tech marketers. It's been about 6 months since I've been here at Motion as the Managing Director of Podcasting. And today I wanted to talk to you about, how it's gone and how I've learned to go from, really not podcasting at all to being able to manage, 30 plus podcasts. So let me just start by saying podcasting is not easy. I've loved my job and I get a great deal of satisfaction from, what I do, but it has been a ton of work. There have been many, nights that I've worked through, weekends that I've worked through, and, I've really had to force myself to, unplug at times so I don't get too carried away. And a lot of those long hours have been by choice, because I'm someone who gets, obsessed over things. So when I commit myself to something, I'll work at it until I figure it out. And I say this because I'm not trying to sit here and, talk about how Ben is the hardest work in the world. I say it because it's important to understand, the amount of work that actually goes into creating, maintaining, and growing a podcast. So you have to be committed and you have to want to do it. I wanted to learn how to podcast. So I chose to work after hours, and to learn to use the tools I needed to in order to be able to edit, podcasts and produce quality content. So that right there is really, the beauty of it for me, at least. After working in tech sales for, 8+ years and working my tail off to hit quotas each quarter before starting all over, podcasting has been a blessing in that I can do all of this work and then see the improvements and the results and walk away from it with multiple pieces of tangible content that I can be proud of. So that said, the first thing that I want to talk about in terms of being able to manage these podcasts is, having a process in place. It would be impossible to manage a podcast, let alone 30 plus, without a clearly defined process that established, not only what is being done, but when. So some of the things that, you need to think about as you are kind of putting a process in place are, when are you recording? When will the files be available for editing? From that point, when are the full audio or the full video episode, when is that going to be edited? When will the show notes be created? When will the video clips, the promo video, quote cards, thumbnail, when is that going to be created? And then when is all of those assets, when are they going to be sent for review? Once that review happens, when will revisions be implemented and, returned? And these are all, steps that need to be assigned to specific dates, but also with specific people who are accountable for them. So at Motion, our standard turnaround time for an episode is 7 business days. During those 7 days, it's critical for us to be able to plan out, not only who is doing each step, but, on what specific day in order for us to complete a quality check and deliver episodes, to our clients on time. So from there, we actually ask our clients for, feedback to be submitted within 3 business days. And we deliver any revisions, if necessary, within 2 to 3 business days from that point. So without this process in place, as you can see, it can really become the wild, wild west pretty quickly. So setting hard deadlines for each step really helps keep us organized and on track, but also allows us to, work on multiple projects at once. So every day our team wakes up, knowing what tasks they have to complete for that day. And then, they get to work, they complete them and move on to the next one. So I really can't stress process enough here. It really is the lifeblood of producing a podcast at a consistent clip. Let's talk about, some of the tools that have helped me on my journey so far. Starting with Descript. Descript is an all-in-one audio and video editing software, and it's been incredibly powerful for me in allowing me to edit video and audio podcasts. So when I first started using it, I was a little overwhelmed with learning the interface, but they do have a great help and support page that I really dug into. So after going through a few of their walkthroughs and tutorials, I was fairly confident in my abilities within a few days. The real-time waveform editing makes cutting, splicing, and rearranging content easy. You can also transcribe audio and video files when you drop them into a project. And if you have multiple files from different speakers, let's say it's a podcast episode with, multiple hosts or guests on, you can create a multi-track sequence to actually combine all of those files together. So the reason that is important is because it allows you to edit the transcript within Descript and simultaneously edit the audio and video, which saves an incredible amount of time. Some of the other tools in Descript that have been, a huge help are things like the blade, which, makes cuts in the tracks, the range tool to help highlight specific portions that you may have made from those blade cuts, and allows you to make clips or rearrange the audio and video for things like, cold openings, for example. And then the slip tool, which is awesome for adjusting the in and out points of clips without, moving them in the timeline and messing up the sync files. So there are also, templates that you can create for adding designs to your show. And it's really easy to drop in music for, an intro and an outro, which really helps to boost the quality of your content. So it does take some time to get used to, using Descript and learning how to use all the tools in order to get your podcast to where you want it. But within a few weeks of consistent use, you'll be a pro. So after editing the podcast, the next major step for us is, collecting feedback for revisions on the assets that we deliver. Frame.io has been a massive help in that area for us, especially when it comes to managing multiple podcasts. So Frame allows me, my team, and our clients to view episodes, video clips, quote cards, and any other pieces of content and provide time-stamped feedback. So we don't have to go through that whole merry-go-round of email chains collecting feedback from sometimes, multiple people for a single episode, which can really kind of, kick up the number of rounds or revisions you make. So having that centralized place where you get all requests for revisions, clearly and efficiently makes a huge difference. Feedback, it's an incredibly important part of managing a podcast. And the reason being is because the faster that you're able to collect that feedback and implement the changes that are needed, the faster that you can actually, take advantage of the content you're creating and publish it and get it out in front of your audience. So there's obviously, a ton that I could expand upon here and could talk for days, but I think that this is a good place to stop before I get too far into the weeds. In a nutshell, if you create a clearly defined process with deadlines that you or your team are held accountable for, spend some time learning how to use tools like Descript to edit and establish a uniform method of collecting feedback for revisions, by something like a Frame.io, you can really learn to manage your own podcasts confidently and, who knows, maybe even 30 of them. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening to this episode of Recorded Content.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Recorded Content. This show is produced by Motion, a full-service podcast agency that's all about working with B2B marketers. Starting a podcast is hard, but it doesn't have to be. Visit motionagency.io and get everything you need to launch and grow your customers' favorite show.